First project, Virgin. Well, I think it's kind of like every Virgin position. It always is going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to feel kind of weird. It's not going to be what you thought it was going to be. But, you know, we all get through it. We have, haven't we?
Before we look at the question from the audience, I have a few ones for you. I was wondering, first of all, what was the trigger for you to start freelancing? Because you all had a bit of experience in employment before. Like, what made you decide, like, okay, that's it, now I want to work for myself? Was it, like, graduated? Was it just, like, one day to another?
Okay. There's many reasons, I would say. For me, it was a gradual process. So for a few years, I actually thought I'm going to be in an agency forever. But then I just realized that every morning when I was going to work, I was feeling absolutely miserable. And I felt like I was in a cage. Also, I'm definitely not much of a morning person. So I hated to wake up every morning super early because like my most productive hours are always in the evening. So it actually meant that I had to stay at work from like 8:30 or 9 in the morning till like super late, or I had to go home and work again afterwards. So like now I think I can definitely manage my time better, and it means that I can be more productive and work more efficiently. And it was really gradual. I was, as I said, suffering quite a lot, but wasn't brave enough to jump and to decide to go on my own. And then at a certain point one day I had like the 10,000th crisis where I was like, what am I doing with my life? I'm just taking every single day of my life and throwing it away, just like rubbish. And it just felt wrong. And I was like, fine, I'm going to do it. Who cares? Let's try. And then when I decided, we found our first client, and therefore it allowed me to keep on going since.
Are we doing one each? Okay. For me, for example, was the ability of having control over my own work. Like I got a bit frustrated where I was working because a lot of the time I wanted to do a little bit more, a little bit different, and you know, your boss just cut it off, being like, oh, that's good enough, don't worry too much, or it just changes things and you don't really agree with, or you don't agree in the way they manage the client relationship, or you know, the way they deliver things. So I like to have that ownership of my own work.
It's a short one. Yeah, I'll take that one. Let's share these one. This is so for me, I think it kind of happened overnight, or like the realization of kind of what I wanted to do for my business happened overnight. But it's a similar kind of story to you guys, like knowing that you have to work for someone else, and the kind of realization that every hour that you put in to someone else's business is not benefiting you at all. But as a freelancer, every extra hour that you put in, and we do put the extra hours in, we do a lot of overtime, that always comes back to you, whether that's for, you know, one of your passions or for your actual business. So yeah, I think it's a combination as well.
Mine was quite simple. I fucking hated myself. I was sitting in a room, it's a Ssshake thing, there's like 15 people, I'm being an utter dick, and it just suddenly thought, I just don't like me. You know, if I've got to be this, to be in this room and earn that dollar, I thought, fuck that. I mean, if this is it, if this is what I'm going to be, and it gets me my fancy holidays, is that a trade-off I'm prepared to accept? So I think sometimes being able to hear ourselves in a room is one of the most transformative things, because you just go, and it was, for me, it was that. For all of the largesse and all the big stuff and whatever, it was like, I don't like me if this is who me needs to be to do this. So for me, I go back to that freedom point, to be free to have my own conversation and not feel like a dick. That was my transformative moment.
So yeah, I guess you guys all covered in your presentation as well this notion of freedom and like choosing the client, choosing what you want to work on. But this freedom also comes with a price. And I would like you guys to tell me a bit more about how do you manage your work-life balance.
Do you want me to? We'll go back the other way. Work-life work-life balance. Work-life balance is a really big conversation that everyone has, and we think there's a method or a strategy. I haven't found that there is. I think someone just recently turned around and said it's not about working out the two blocks together. It's about how you integrate things. So I don't know how everybody feels about this, but I have 2 children. I don't see them all the time, but when they're with me, sometimes I still have to work. So to me, work-life balance is how do I intercut all of those things in a way that I don't fail at both. So to me, it's back to the calibration point. Being able to be all of those bits of you at the same time in the same room is, for me, the thing I try and stay focused on.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to maintain. I think you'll never find the perfect balance, and sometimes you'll be really busy with really good jobs that you don't want to turn down. And I think one of the trickiest things for me, certainly as a freelancer, was kind of saying no to things and pushing them back. Because, as a freelancer, especially when you're starting out, you feel afraid about meeting those end of the month bills and London life, which is expensive. But trying to schedule in your fun time to do with work as well is great, because we're living our passions. So if you can kind of work them in together, then you end up being in a really good place. And again, work with nice people, and they end up being your friends, and you do better work together as a result, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, building a bit of what Julian was saying, it's about interlacing the two, and I feel like if you have control of your own schedule, you don't have to necessarily do 9 to 5 or 9 to 10 or whatever. You can just take your moments. If I feel like I'm not being productive, I can't concentrate, maybe I have a break and go to the gym, and no one is upset about it because I'm my own boss. So just scheduling.
So yeah, I think that they've actually covered most of it. Maybe what I would add to that is make sure, sometimes you feel quite alone, because being in an office, you're used to being surrounded by people all the time. And even if at the beginning I really enjoyed having complete silence around me and being able to focus much more, after a while I realized that maybe working around other people is a really good thing, because then you can have breaks together. So of course, Marty and I try to work together as much as possible, but we've decided to start working at an incubator, because then we're always surrounded by other people and we can always have coffee breaks with other, crazy creatives, which is good.
Yeah, so I guess essentially it's also finding what's the right thing for you, what's the right environment as well. And
needs calibration.
Cool. Can I hear? Because I guess some of the people here are just starting out, and I would like to know, how did you secure your first clients? What do you do when you don't really have a portfolio yet?
Usually as a freelancer, you're not starting from nothing. It can be university, it can be a previous job. You'll always have your knowledge and your know-how. So I guess it's about believing in it and being able to sell it to the client. And I would say maybe as women, sometimes we are not confident enough. We're always scared that we are not good enough. There are actually stats saying that women in the workforce tend to be promoted later because they're always underconfident, and they will always accept a promotion if they know that they can do the job 110%. So we actually had to push ourselves a bit more and be yeah, fine, we know how to do this. We're definitely confident that we'll be able to do it. We'll do it one step at a time. We'll consider it a marathon rather than a short, fast run, and we keep on inventing it day after day, learning new things. So
yeah, well done. Yeah. Anything to add about your first client?
I think for me it was, while I was doing a full-time job, I was taking days down. So I was starting to do 4 days a week, and then I started to do 3 days a week. And then it got so busy that I was, you know, even though it was quite scary, like you guys were saying, you were able to just about make that leap. And as soon as you make that leap, then you feel like, right, I'm doing this. This is all I got. But it starts to all fall into place, and then naturally it starts to snowball, because especially at that stage in your work, and this should be at any stage in your work, you do things really properly, you take a lot of time, you put in 110%, because you're also discovering, you know, your workability and how to deliver the best kind of product as well. So yeah, it's a kind of combination again.
Confidence again.
It's all about confidence. First project, Virgin. Well, I think it's kind of like every Virgin position. It always is going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to feel kind of weird. It's not going to be what you thought it was going to be. But, you know, we all get through it. We have, haven't we? Doesn't matter what age you are. And I think to your point about women in this position, please understand the one fucking truth of all of this. Blokes go in, and it is this one-dimensional, go in with this absolutely unassailable sense of self and just go, I just got to do this and power it through. And they don't stop, they don't shut up, and they keep going. The truth is, everyone, regardless of gender, goes into a room, especially in the first periods of time, with no idea, terrified. Whatever you think they think, everyone's terrified. And actually, I think it's liberating to every one of us to go, we're all shitting ourselves. We all don't think we really cut it. You know, the whole imposter theory thing, it's true. It's a human truth. So I would say whatever first room you go into, embrace the Virgin in yourself and just go, it's going to be clumsy, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it will kind of get better. And there's something beautiful in that. And actually not feel that you've immediately failed for just feeling that.
One thing I would, definitely. There's one thing I would add to that. There's a really good TED talk by Amy Cuddy, and she talks about like empowering the moment and preparing for job interviews, and she really goes back to kind of primal instincts, and you know, doing this kind of thing in the toilet before you know, it's kind of power dynamics, you know, power poses and things like that. Even if you do that kind of 2 minutes before you go into a pitch, or you know, before you're about to sort of sell yourself, it's a great thing to watch, and it's pretty inspiring. Again, it's something that I show my kids at point blank, and they almost kind of come to tears when it comes to the end, as it's a real inspirational talk. Yeah.
Cool. Can you tell the name again?
It's Amy Cuddy,
Cool.
and it's a TED talk. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, so Thomas, you said like this is all we got. You guys said that you talked about the business baby. Julian, you talked about having a thick skin. And I was wondering how you guys deal with critique and unsatisfied clients.
Terrible. Like, constructive criticism is extremely important, and ultimately you're delivering a creative product for someone else, you know?
Like, part of you, like.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I say, for my job is interesting because it's half creative and half technical, sometimes a little bit more technical. So I think one of the reasons actually why I work with a lot of the clients that I do, and they come back, is because I want to deliver their artistic idea, and I'm very respectful of that. So it's about making sure that you get a good brief from your client. Understand, you know, it could be different from one project to another as well. Sometimes they could want you to add a bit more creative flair to your project. But if you understand that from the get-go, you're going to be in a better place. And the more and more you work with a client or an individual, the more and more that will become clear. But you've got to take on creative criticism for the work that you're doing. You know, you can't be too stubborn all the time, unless it's a kind of technicality where, you know, it's got to be a certain size JPEG, or, you know, you can't have it any louder, mate. Like, it's getting pressed to vinyl. Like, you've got to be able to balance that kind of technical output with the creative product that they are ultimately paying you for to develop. Yeah.
Any words on critic, Julian, especially with writing?
I'm shit at criticism. I think actually, actually that's it. Except you're shit at criticism. You know, if it's your baby, it's really hard to sort of suck that thing up when somebody goes, especially if they're a bit meh about the whole thing. I mean, it's actually almost easier when they go, eat shit, I don't like it, because you've got something to act on, you've got something to pivot on. But actually, I think a lot of the time you'll have to deal with people just this slightly anodyne response. And I think that's back to that thing of what do you do in that moment? Because our normal tendency is to either over-defend or retreat. And that, again, it's back to that calibration thing. It's one of the hardest things we'll do. So all I would say is take a breath before you respond, because what we all tend to do with passion is respond immediately. But it really is that, like, it's like drunk dialing and texting. It's the same human truth applies. Just take a breath. Say back, somebody actually used this thing recently where and it sounds a bit condescending, but it is that thing where you go, repeat back to somebody going, if I understand this correctly, because it gives you time to compute. Because sometimes criticism hurts and you need time to take a breath and get over it. And sometimes just going, have I understood the criticism, gives you enough time to process it, and it gives them enough time to think about whether they're being a dick or not, or whether it's real criticism.
Yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, I would say the same. Like I don't know. I'm a crier. Like I tend to when I get really emotional, fuck. Like I can't cry in front of a client. So just distance yourself from what you're doing. Like, you know, we talk about our business baby, but I never really feel like the work I'm doing is like, this is mine, this is perfect. Like, you know, design should be humble, and then it should be about receiving critics and about having a discussion with the person. So, you know, just have a conversation, and if they're really, really annoying, you suck it up.
No, I actually think from my point of view, quite often what I found is it's related to misunderstandings as well. So quite often, either you misread the brief or the client hasn't been clear enough in the brief. So as an advice, I would always say, as Julian was saying, not only like repeat back criticism, but always try to rewrite the brief in a couple of lines and maybe share it back with the client to ensure that it's exactly what they want. And ask them for thorough reviews of your work. So whenever they say they don't like something, try to understand why they don't like it, because sometimes it's just like some trivial details that can be changed in 2 minutes, and they make it seem much bigger than what it actually is. And so yeah, definitely that. And when you need to push back, because you really believe that what the client is saying really doesn't need to be changed, and you believe in an idea, then like fight for it, even if it's hard.